So hopefully it won't be too loud, but we'll give it a try. So I guess this person had contact with like aliens, mm, and they were in the military, and uh, some other things happened. She got kicked out. Um, all right, and then I'm at this part where it's talking about time slipping, timeline slipping. The relevant part that I wanted to talk about, and I'm hoping more people can relate to, accidental time travel. It actually gets kind of crazy here. She had trouble explaining it last November, or at least well enough for me to grasp it. She described feeling time changing and moving back and forth within it, but I didn't really get any specific enough details to fully grasp what she was trying to say. She wasn't comfortable talking about it at first, so were sparse. She almost never wanted to talk about it whenever I'd bring it up. A couple months ago, the Y Files posted a new episode, Accidental Time Travelers. That's right. I immediately texted her, laughing my ass off, sent her the link for the video with a screenshot of the title. When you said that term last year, I didn't know it was a real term. I thought you came up with it, trying to describe what you went through. Funny enough, she did too. She'd never heard it before she used it that day. In the episode, he told a number of stories about people who'd, for example, walk around uh, walk around a corner and end up in the 1800s or the 1960s. Seeing time accurate clothing in vehicles, buildings, and restaurants that don't exist in the present. Stuff like that. After she watched a couple of them, she said it's not at all like what she has experienced. Just watching the first 5 seconds. No, I do not time travel to the 18th century. My weird incidences of time slipping are all within my own timeline. Then, time goes back to the present and you shake it off. Maybe up your meds, but sometimes time doesn't go back to the present, and the new place and time become the new present. And you have to get used to it, and maybe up your meds there in the new place too, to forget about the other present. That maybe was just a very realistic dream. She said none of these types of experiences started until after her encounter. Within my own lifetime, which she has described, one vivid example before the Air Force, she got pregnant when she was a teenager, decided she wasn't ready and terminated it. I'm so awkward. Why did I laugh right there? I just thought it was funny that I left out the it. Anyways, sincere apologies if that's an uncomfortable subject for anyone reading this, but it's important for the story. She said after her encounter, when her time slips started, it was like she would move through time to different points in her own life. At one point, she slipped back to when she was 15 and still pregnant and lived her life from there, and then her life played out differently. She kept the baby, brought it to term, never joined the military, and raised her daughter. Her daughter was 17 by the time the next uncontrollable time slip occurred, back to when she was a teenager and her life played out differently again. She never saw her daughter again, but she still remembers her vividly to the point she still writes the girl letters on her birthday, even though she no longer exists / never existed. And everyone in my life thinks it's weird as hell that I do this. I can't help it. I miss her so much. Kind of don't have the words to explain how much that effed me up. She said it's like waking up one day and your child just ceased to exist, like they never existed, only your memories of them remain. But even though no one else remembers them, she still remembers vivid details about her, what they did on specific birthdays, long conversations, hobbies, her favorite songs, times she got in trouble, etc. Like they're extremely detailed memories. She said she has 17 years worth of memories of someone who's essentially never existed in this timeline. She wanted to get back to her, tried to get back to her, but her timeline slipping is never something she was able to learn to control. She's essentially always been a passenger along for the ride. She said that happened to her a few different times. She's given birth to and raised a couple of different children who don't exist in this timeline. The way she's been processing it, she was traveling through time and living out her life differently each time, but occasionally she'd slip back to what she perceived as her main timeline. One of the reasons I don't think what she is describing should actually be considered time travel, she's not describing physically traveling to an earlier point in her life and seeing herself as a teenager. She's describing being that teenager again. It's like only her consciousness is time slipping into different versions of herself. I asked her if she felt like these were just memories of something she hadn't gone through but remembered anyways, like false memories. Nope. So I asked her if she felt like she was actually reliving her life over and over, if she felt older than she really was. She's only 42, but remembers living for 212 years. It wasn't an estimate, she spit it out the second I asked. She'd actually done the math already, which is WTF enough in itself. She also shared something about her mom recently. She never really talked about her much before, like she was embarrassed by her. My friend was diagnosed with the same thing her mom had been, with bipolar disorder, and her mother has what my friend has described as memory issues or false memories. But they're weird, like she remembers things that didn't happen, like having a positive relationship with my friend throughout her life when it was anything but. One specific story, though, recently she'd gone to visit her mother and they got into a fight when her mom tried to feed her. My friend has been a vegan for as long as I've known her. I used to tease her about it a bit in the Air Force. Her mother not only didn't remember her being vegan, she swore up and down that my friend ate meat. Where are we? Hey, Ellie. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Seth. And, I'm. Um, One specific story, though. Recently, she'd gone to visit her mother and they got into a fight. When her mom tried to feed her, my friend has. Oh, sorry. I already read that part. Her mother not only didn't remember her being vegan, she swore up and down that my friend ate meat the last time she went to visit, like the weekend before. She accused my friend of trying to gaslight her and blew up over it. It was like her mother said it runs in families, so is it possible, whatever seeming possible ability she might have, that her mom could have it too and passed it down? There was also an interesting story about one of her sons. It's one of the earlier messages in this conversation, so she was still struggling, trying to explain it. I would just feel like I was in the same place at a different time than it had just been, which crosses over with lost time, but sometimes it goes back to the original time. That's really scary. I used to think my son did it too, like I transferred the ability to him. He would just say interesting things sometimes, like when he was 3, he said, "I'm sorry about your shoes, Mama," and I said, "What happened to my shoes?" To which he replied, "Nothing right now, but when I was 6 I ruined them." I replied, "But you're only 3. And he said, "I know." When he was 6 he destroyed a pair of my shoes by scribbling all over them. Wow. I humorously remembered the previous conversation, which he had no recollection of, and decided not to punish him because he had already apologized, LMAO. I remembered her telling me about his apology when he was 3. This conversation was the first time she told me he actually destroyed her shoes when he was 6. Oh, thanks, Longfellow, that's nice of you. I think it's possible at least what she's been experiencing is related to the multiverse. Is it possible to share memories with different versions of yourself? If consciousness isn't local, which things like remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, and astral projection experiences, if any are true, seem to suggest, could it be possible to swap your consciousness with another version of yourself somewhere else in the multiverse? Again, she said the time slipping, time travel didn't start until after her encounter, so I'm wondering if whatever she went through could have activated or unlocked something in her, or made something she was passed down from her mother even stronger, intentionally or otherwise. There is another story she shared about something kind of effed up that happened to her I think might be relevant here too. My ex-girlfriend told me that she caught me sitting in the tub with my clothes on a couple of times, mumbling about having blood on my hands, and not acknowledging that she was in the room when there was no blood on my hands. I don't remember that at all. A therapist called it lost time and said it also commonly happens to people with very severe trauma. Lost time happens to experiencers too, but I can't help but wonder if something like that could be explained by another version of herself close by, going through something heavily traumatic and she just picked up on it, or they slipped into her briefly, or they swapped places in an attempt for the other version to escape whatever they were going through. She told me that after one of her time slips slash resets, her life played out differently. In this current timeline, she had met a girl, they dated for a bit, and it didn't pan out. Once the timeline reset, that relationship played out differently. They spent 10 years together and got married. She was at a park with her wife having a picnic when she uncontrollably slipped back into this timeline. She was then immediately in an apartment with her abusive ex, who she was with before she got married. In the middle of a fight, she ran from the apartment and went to find her wife from the other timeline. The girl did remember my friend from the brief time they dated, but had no memories of the life they built together, and pleaded with her to seek help. It was like their entire marriage had sorry. I laugh at the most awkward parts. Sorry. Had just evaporated, and she was the only one that could remember it. She said that's happened to her a number of times. Uncontrollable slip and her life would change drastically. Waking up in a new apartment she didn't remember, but clearly living there from the photos of her around the place, being with one person in one place, slip, and she's with different people in a completely new environment. Sometime earlier or later in her life than the time she just left. She's not able to make any sense of the 2 or 3 days that followed the event. One thing she shared more recently, she said that for those few days after her encounter, that's when the time slipping started. She said she felt like those few days, she was constantly moving between different points of her own life. No control over it, so her experiences of time during those days feels all jumbled and confused. She's unable to make any sense of it for herself or put it into words, but it lessened over time. They would happen less often over time, but it took several years for her to become used to it or get enough time between slips to where she'd almost get to feel normal again. But then it started immediately after her encounter is why I think whatever she's been experiencing is a direct result / side effect of whatever she went through the night of her UFO encounter. Oh, so I can smoke. Worth noting, the only way she's described it, I saw something that night and then reported it. Given all of her other experiences, I think it's highly likely there's a lot more to the experience than she remembers. She's either buried it or spent so long not talking about it that she doesn't remember everything. None of this is definitive proof, for sure, and I'm not offering it as such, but it has me thinking about the multiverse far more often, and how much of a part it could play in perceived experiences. Could it account for at least some poltergeist-like activity? What if there's a natural temporary quantum entanglement-like connection between matter or objects in different universes? Could moving an object in one universe affect an object in another when no one else is touching it? Could opening a door in one seem to cause a door to open on its own in another? Feeling a presence in an empty room, what if it's just because that room isn't empty in a nearby universe? I'm convinced the rest of her experiences are real, so it's hard for me to not at least consider these things. She's given me some more details around the time slipping, but there's a lot I don't know yet. She still needs some gentle prodding before she shares more info. Missing children, even after admitting something like that, some details she's extremely reluctant to talk about. She still has nightly nightmares from it. I've known about them for years, but I've never been able to get her to talk about them, so I can't even imagine the other kinds of things she's been through or just remembers going through. That's... So she kind of was like Gandalf when he went down into the abyss, and I think he said he like lived, I think he said he like literally lived multiple lifetimes or something. So she's, yeah, I don't know, that must be hard on the psyche to be conscious of for that long, I guess, or have the same consciousness for that long. So she's like having all these nightmares. Yeah, think about that, and she's probably always really scared to slip into another timeline, like There doesn't seem to be any pattern or rhyme or reason to it. It just happens. And imagine if that were you. You're just enjoying life, and then you slip into another timeline, into like a younger version of yourself, and you relive your life in a different way. I got a toothpick stuck in my... Oh yeah, I remember that. And in the picture, it's in my top... Whoa. Okay, I need to see that picture, because I remember that. So if you slipped timelines, I did too, because I specifically remember it going into your toenail. That's like a very strange thing. Wow. Anyways, speaking of timelines, this is from 8 years ago, which I think makes it even more interesting. But I have to turn on my hotspot. Okay, just had to turn on my hotspot. 3 stories of possible time travel. Hold on, I need some water. Okay. Brennan writes, in 1935, while still a wing commander, he was sent to inspect a disused airfield near Edinburgh at a place called Drem. He found it in a very dilapidated state with cattle grazing on grass that had forced through cracks in the tarmac. Later that day, he ran into trouble while flying his biplane in heavy rain, and decided to fly back to Drem to get his bearings. As he approached the airfield, the torrential rain abruptly changed to bright sunlight. When he looked down, he saw the airfield had been completely renovated and was now in use. There were mechanics in blue overalls walking around, and 4 yellow planes parked in the runway. One of these was a model which, for all his aviation experience, he completely failed to recognize. It was a very puzzling experience, not alone because the instant renovation was quite impossible, but also because mechanics were supposed to wear khaki and Air Force planes were painted with a silvery aluminum paint. 4 years later, Goddard solved the mystery. With war now raging in Europe, he happened to visit Drem again to find it exactly as he had seen it in 1935. Completely with blue overalled mechanics and yellow planes. He even found the plane he had been unable to identify earlier, a Miles Magister. Had Goddard somehow flown 4 years into the future and then shortly returned to his own time? A remarkable time travel case was published in Strange Magazine 2, spring 1988. The article Time Traveler, written by Ken Meigs, is about a man who calls himself LC, his real initials, and who experienced one of the most amazing events of his life, something that he could never forget. Meigs writes, LC and a business associate, Charlie, fictitious name, had just finished lunch in the small southwest Louisiana town of Abbeville. Still discussing their work, they began their drive north along Highway 167 toward the oil center city of Lafayette, about 15 miles away. The date was October 20th, 1969. The time about 1:30 in the afternoon. It was one of those picture-perfect days in fall, clear blue skies, and a nippy 60 degrees, just right conditions for cruising along with the car windows rolled down. The highway had been practically traffic-free until they spotted some distance ahead what appeared to be an old turtleback-type auto traveling very slowly. As they closed the distance between their vehicles and this relic from their past, their discussion turned from their insurance work to the old car ahead of them. While the style of the auto indicated it to be decades old, it appeared to be in showroom condition, like it might have just been serviced by some, which evoked words of admiration from both Elsie and Charlie. Because the car was traveling so slowly, the two men decided to pass it. But before, slowed to better appreciate the beauty and mint condition of the vehicle. As they did, Elsie noticed a very large, bright orange plate with the year 1940 clearly printed on it. This was most unusual and probably illegal. As they passed the car slowly to its left, Elsie, who was in the passenger seat, noticed the driver of the car was a young woman dressed in what appeared to be 1940 vintage clothing. This was 1969, and a young woman wearing a hat complete with a long-colored feather and fur coat was, to say the least, a bit unusual. A small child stood on the seat next to her, possibly a little girl. The gender of the child was hard to determine, as it too wore a heavy coat and cap. The windows of her car were rolled up, a fact which puzzled Elsie because though the temperature was nippy, it was quite pleasant, and a light sweater was sufficient to keep you comfortable. As they pulled up next to the car, their study turned to alarm as their attention was riveted to the animated expressions of fear and panic on the woman's face. Driving alongside of her at a near crawl, no traffic in either direction allowed this maneuvering. They could see her frantically looking back and forth as if lost or in need of help. She appeared on the verge of tears. 40 years, that's a good one. I guess the past. That's a good one. Both would be pretty cool, though. Being on the passenger side, Elsie called out to her and asked her if she needed help. To this she nodded yes, all the while looking down. Old cars sat a little higher than the low profiles of today's cars. With a very puzzled look at their vehicle, Elsie motioned to her to pull over and park on the side of the road. He had to repeat the request several times with hand signs and mouthing the words because her window was rolled up and it seemed she had difficulty hearing them. They saw her begin to pull over, so they continued to pass her so as to safely pull over also in front of her. As they came to a halt on the shoulder of the road, Elsie and Charlie turned to look at the old car behind them. However, to their astonishment, there is no sign of the car. Remember, this was on an open highway with no side roads nearby, no place to hide a car. It and its occupants had simply vanished. So there's a guy behind them, and I guess he saw a bit of it too. He was driving north on highway, and he saw some distance away a new car passing up a very old car at a slow pace, so slow that they appeared to be nearly stopped. He saw the new car pull onto the shoulder, and the old car started to do the same. Momentarily it obstructed the new car and then suddenly disappeared. All that remained of him was the new car on the shoulder of the highway. Desperate to associate logic to this incredible sight, he immediately assumed an accident had occurred. Indeed, an accident had not occurred, but something more haunting, perhaps as tragic, and certainly more mysterious had. After discussing what each had seen from their perspective, the three men walked away for an hour. The third man, who was from out of state, insisted on reporting it to the police. He felt that it was a missing person situation, and they had been witnesses. Elsie and Charlie refused to do so. They had no idea where their woman and child along with the car had gone. And that'll be it for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.